world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Just list the important things that Boris said. He talked about a series of sanctions, the strongest sanctions ever.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that really stood out to me were that the major Russian banks will have their assets frozen, will be excluded from the UK financial system, legislation to stop Russian companies and the state from raising finance or borrowing money, asset freezes on 100 new individuals in addition to those mentioned, Aeroflot, the Russian airline being banned from landing in the UK, and many others. The big question as well remains about SWIFT, which is the system that allows money to be sent around the world. It would take Europe as well to work together with the UK. They can't do it unilaterally to stop the Russians using SWIFT. And it was interesting. I found the language interesting in terms of what Boris Johnson was saying. He said he said essentially they're in lockstep with the United States.
Yeah.
The Europeans seem to be dragging their feet here a little bit.
Just to let you know, Biden's now not speaking at 5:30. It's
shocker.
6:30. That's a shocker. Richard, you picked up on, welcome to the show, you picked up on Theresa May. She was saying, will every possible sanction be levelled at Vladimir Putin? You said this is a very important point.
I think it was very pointed from Theresa May because she was really challenging Boris. Look, Boris talks a good game. He's talked before about using lots of sanctions and coming down hard, and then he delivers 5 banks and 3 individuals. You know, frankly, everyone criticised him because it wasn't enough. I think what she was doing was putting him on notice that the House of Commons and I think the country expects the Prime Minister and Liz Truss and the Cabinet to really deliver on every possible sanction, much more than previously was being considered. And Peter's right, this issue of SWIFT is important. I think the EU is dragging its feet.
Why would they be doing that?
Because they're so dependent on Russia for their energy. This is the point the Prime Minister referred to in his statement. He talked about the fact that we've got to get the EU away from being dependent, but that's, in the normal course of events, that would take years.
Right.
We need to do that as an urgency. How can we...
So that Russia have to look to China or other markets and we have to be self-sufficient or get it... Where else would we get it from?
Well, we need to basically open up the taps on the North Sea, in America, in the Middle East, everywhere possible to open the taps so that the EU can get their energy from somewhere else. But also what we've essentially got to do is economically strangle Russia. Now, that's going to be very painful for everybody. Painful for Russians, but also very painful for companies and people that trade with Russia.
Of course.
But that is the reality. It's either that or the next stage, and I completely disagree with someone like David Davis, who said we've got to look at a no-fly zone, because that is essentially one step away from World War III. I think we need to look at economic strangulation. I would know people listening to this would want me to ask this. You two are experts. We go on and on about strangling the Russian economy, SWIFT, Aeroflot, oligarchs, donors, laundromat, all of these things. What if that doesn't work? Can somebody answer me a question? Do we genuinely believe that a man in 2022 who for 8 or 9 years seemingly has plotted this will stop at Ukraine? Let's say he doesn't stop at Kiev, Richard. What say if he goes after other ex-Soviet states in this whole bring it back into the mother? What happens? Are we going to sit, all of us, for a period of months or years whilst he hoovers up Europe? No, I think we're crystal clear that if he goes into, as people have said, if he puts a toe cap into a NATO state, then that is an absolute game changer.
Are any of the ex-Soviet states NATO states?
Yes.
Yes, there are.
Yes, absolutely.
There are a few of them,
the likes of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania.
Why was Ukraine not? Can I ask that of you too?
Because of the cultural and historic ties, which are much deeper between Ukraine and Russia. And the question mark is, and some people disagree, some people say that we shouldn't have gone eastward with NATO.
Yeah.
I disagree, because actually the evidence is clear. He hasn't gone into any of the recent NATO states that were former USSR states. He has gone in now to Ukraine, which didn't join NATO. Yeah. So there is the evidence that actually that does act as a barrier.
Do you believe, you're a politician, do you believe that this is all he wants, or do you think... I mean, I described him to you off air as a madman. You said, I think he's a madman. I think he's actually, somebody who's worked this out. He's probably slightly believes his own publicity. In his mind, where does this end? Where does this finish?
So I was wrong, because I didn't think there was an incentive for him to go into Ukraine. I thought he had achieved higher gas prices, more money, his seat at the top table. I still don't understand what is the extra incentive apart from pure ego about
It's got to be pure ego, hasn't it?
And there's all sorts of question marks about that.
You said, Peter, the other day, with respect, you said to me, he felt like he'd been out of the limelight for 4 or 5 years. And the thing about Putin is he's always seen himself as this big egotistical leader and has quietly been plotting for 8 or 9 years. Something I picked up on with a guy called Andy Myers, who was a cyber expert we were talking to from America. He said this has been going on for years. Why has nobody on the technical side picked that up in Europe, that this is something that he seems to do? And I said to the guy in America, can you see him creating that sort of cyber uncertainty in other ex-Soviet states? That maybe you're right, but my concern is, and I've been called everything under the sun on this for saying, this man shouldn't be trusted. We're now sitting here saying, well, they're not in NATO, so that's all right.
No,
I genuinely don't believe he'll stop at Kiev. That's my opinion.
We're not saying that's all right, but there are differences.
Yeah, sure, I get that.
But in a sense, maybe, Tobias Ellwood has been for months saying we should have a NATO division.
He
in
has.
Ukraine.
He said
I've disagreed with him because there are differences between the recent NATO countries and Ukraine because of these much deeper cultural and historic ties.
Yeah.
The Russian-speaking elements of Ukraine. So there is a difference. But, frankly, he has to know now that this is it, and he has to know that essentially he will lose at this.
See, that's the word, and we started, didn't we, 2 hours ago with this? To me, chilling. This was when I woke up this morning. To anyone who will consider interfering from the outside, if you do, you will face consequences greater than any you have ever faced in your history.
But where did he learn that language? From Donald Trump with Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
My button's bigger than yours.
Yeah.
Don't mess with me.
Yeah.
And I've no doubt at all that if Trump was still in the White House, this would not be going on. No doubt at all.
Well, we talked yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah, I agree with Richard. Yeah.
Several American political commentators said Donald Trump would win tomorrow. He would beat Joe Biden and be back in the White House.
Well, where is Biden today? He's announcing press conferences, he's announcing statements, he's not coming out. Then when he actually says something, it's seen as too weak. Where is the statesmanship?
Frightening that's the leader of the free world, isn't it?
He's past it.
And the reality is, of course, that is what Putin has played off. He's known that the US is weak.
Yep.
He's known that the US and NATO was weak over Afghanistan, and he's used that.
Yeah, there's not the legacy, really, Richard, isn't there? Because look at Syria, for example, in terms of people not going in there because of the damage over Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think this is, we've known about this for such a long time, yet people are expressing shock that it's happened.
And we are heading potentially towards, if we in the West try to economically strangle Russia, then Russia looks eastward, as you touched on, to China, where it can sell its gas, its oil. We're then into potentially almost like a sort of a world that is split between those two geopolitical powers.
Does he want to be in the arms of the Chinese, Putin?
I think it's all about money and influence, and he's got the resources, he's got the commodities much more than China has.
Tell you what I thought was interesting was Boris Johnson seemed to hit upon repeatedly. He addressed the Russian people and said, "Is this what you want?" He also implied that if Putin goes too far, the Kremlin could take him down themselves, the Russian government. But he seems immovable. He was prime minister and changed the rules. He became president and elected himself with new. How long has he ruled there? 20 years.
But if he gets into a state, this is all hypothetical. But
I know you like hyper.
Well, indeed. If we're looking at a nuclear standoff or even a move in that direction, there will be back channels, as there always have been, between the Russian generals and the American generals, saying, "Hold on a second, is this politician actually someone we want to follow?" Yeah. It's interesting because Boris Johnson, I think, has quite effectively over the past couple of days tried to put clear blue water between what Vladimir Putin is saying and what the Russian people and their position. Do they want their sons and daughters to die?
Which is why Tom Tugendhat's intervention in that question was absolutely right, that the West needs to make sure that these speeches and things are translated into languages and that actually Russian citizens will be able to listen to them and hear them. And I think that is a really important point. We need to know that potential sort of division between the people, and think that message is getting through.
Let's talk politics. My favourite subject. I know we've talked about Sugray and Partygate enough, and now we're on to Ukraine. My opinion, and you'll accuse me of being biased, no doubt, of those those performances in the House of Commons. That's Boris Johnson, the statesman-like leader. Keir Starmer did nothing for me, and people are going to say, did he do anything for you, seriously, the way he spoke? It's just monologue.
No, what's happened with Keir Starmer is that someone else is writing his speeches.
He doesn't feel it, does he?
No. But he doesn't. No one's given him any PR training how to make speeches.
Absolutely.
There's no oratorical flourish.
Yeah, he's trying to come across
you get from Boris.
He's trying to come across as statesman-like, and he's not. And the thing with Boris Johnson is that this is a place where he feels very secure. And it's interesting because everyone thinks Boris is a great joker, and yes, he can carry off a joke and so on. But when he is focused, laser-like on something and delivering this speech, which he's probably written himself in collaboration with other people from the Foreign Office, diplomats, Defence Secretary, and people like that, he felt it. I think it felt like a moment when he was giving that statement.
And when you see when you see the shambling wreck of a man accused of having cheese and wine and blah, 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 blah,
it's like a different person.
When you watch him there, and I know you're not his biggest fan, neither have I been, but that was statesmanlike, and you would buy that, you would follow that, you would listen to that, and you would react to that.
And in fairness, the nation did buy that just over 2 years ago, and which begs the question: why can't he always be like that?
I really agree with that.
In which case, he would have been Prime Minister for 10 years.
And that's the frustration to many traditional Conservatives who say, we gave you this amazing mandate because of the way that you were and the way you could speak and make us feel, and then you've acted like an idiot.
But it's interesting in terms of the fact that I've always felt that Boris Johnson is an amazing campaigner, but not a great governor. And I think that was almost a campaigning speech that took me back to the 2019 campaign when he was putting across his vision for the country. And I think that's the space that he is happiest and that he is best in as a performer.
And of course, also, it's a Churchillian moment. Potentially, that is a historical speech.
Yeah.
And who is Boris's greatest hero? Churchill. And so I think that will have been on his mind.
And let's make a point about Churchill. An amazing wartime prime minister. In peacetime, he wasn't that good and he got thrown out.
That's right.
And not probably good at the administration. I mean, let's look at Theresa May, who stood up and didn't miss another opportunity to stick the knife in, understandably. You said you worked with a very nice woman, just not very effective in terms of oratory or leading. Great, I'm sure, at the paperwork. Great at dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
That's why she was a decent Home Secretary, because that is all about the detail. Being Home Secretary is all about the detail, whereas as Prime Minister you need a strategy, you need to be a kind of almost a chairman or woman of the board, looking at these strategic issues and then allowing other people to get along with the day-to-day work and letting people run those departments.
She's actually acting a bit like a sort of non-exec chairman or chairwoman, overseeing the current Prime Minister.
She needs to be quiet.
Well, I think she's been better as a backbencher since she was a Prime Minister in terms of challenging
her, don't you?
Prime Minister.
I'd much rather have Theresa May and her interventions, as Richard says, than some of the out-of-touch 25 years old stuff from John Major.
Is she...
Or Tony Blair, for that matter.
Is she bitter and twisted about Boris Johnson?
I think she probably is, yeah.
Really?
But, I mean, so would you be if you'd been treated in the way that she was, I would imagine. Being Prime Minister is a really tough role, and it's always very difficult to know what to do afterwards. But I think, she's someone who's very committed to being an MP. I remember when she was Prime Minister, she was a warden at a fun run in her constituency. Sort of thing, in Maidenhead. I sort of think you're running the country, whereas others have not taken that route. But no, she will take her responsibilities as a backbencher to question the government, to be a critical friend, very, very seriously indeed.
Are you going home now? I mean, I thank you both very much indeed. Are you hanging around for Biden later?
I can hang around for Biden.
I can hang around for Biden. Up now.
Good talk. Hot talk.
Bold talk. Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.